The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city streets. Alex's days were dictated by the need to feed his addiction. He awoke each morning with a single goal: to find the means to sustain the hunger gnawing away at his insides. His life had devolved into a series of transactions and fleeting encounters, with each momentary high providing a brief respite from the crushing despair that always threatened to engulf him. As he walked, he couldn't help but notice the people around him. Some went about their daily routines, oblivious to his pain, while others seemed to share in his misery. Among the latter, he often caught whispers of a mysterious figure known only as the Puppeteer. They spoke of him in hushed tones, as if he held the key to their salvation. One day, Alex found himself in a seedy bar, his hands shaking as he downed a glass of cheap liquor. The room was dimly lit, the flickering neon lights outside casting an eerie glow on the faces of the patrons. He could feel the hunger rising within him, like a monster clawing at the walls of his stomach. Desperation gnawed at him, and in that moment, he would have given anything to break free from the Puppeteer's grip. It was then that he overheard a conversation between two men sitting at the far end of the bar. They spoke in hushed voices, their eyes darting around nervously.
"The Puppeteer, man. He's got everyone dancing to his tune,"
one of them muttered, his voice thick with fear.
"Be careful what you say,"
the other man warned, glancing around the room.
"He could be listening."
Alex's heart raced as he listened to their conversation. Who was this Puppeteer? Was he the one responsible for the misery that had befallen so many people? And if so, why did they speak of him with such reverence and fear? Determined to learn more, Alex began to ask questions. He spoke to others who shared his addiction, and he listened to their stories of the Puppeteer. Some spoke of him as a savior, a figure who could grant them the freedom they desperately sought. Others spoke of him as a malevolent force, one who pulled the strings of their lives, keeping them trapped in a never-ending cycle of addiction and despair. Despite the conflicting accounts, one thing was clear: the Puppeteer held a power that was both alluring and terrifying. As Alex continued his search, he began to feel a strange connection to this enigmatic figure. He could almost sense the Puppeteer's presence, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. Over time, Alex became increasingly obsessed with the Puppeteer. He spent his days gathering information, following leads, and chasing rumors in the hope of finding the truth. He began to believe that if he could just find the Puppeteer, he could somehow break free from the chains that bound him. As the weeks wore on, Alex found himself consumed by the hunt. He could feel the Puppeteer's influence growing stronger, as if he were drawing closer to the source of his power. And then, one fateful night, he found what he was looking for. It was in a derelict building on the outskirts of the city that Alex finally came face to face with the Puppeteer. The building was hidden in the shadows, its crumbling walls barely standing against the ravages of time. Alex hesitated for a moment before pushing open the creaky door and stepping inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the only light came from a flickering candle that cast eerie shadows on the walls. In the center of the room, a figure sat on a makeshift throne, surrounded by people who seemed to be in a trance-like state. The figure wore an elegant suit, his face hidden behind a mask that bore the visage of a grinning puppet. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and as he turned to face Alex, he knew he had found the puppeteer.
You've come seeking freedom, haven't you?
The puppeteer asked, his voice smooth and seductive. Alex hesitated, unsure of how to respond. He knew that the puppeteer held the power to grant him the relief he sought, but at what cost? The faces of the people around him were hollow and empty, their eyes devoid of hope or joy. Was this the fate that awaited him if he accepted the puppeteer's offer?
I want to be free from this.
Alex stammered, his voice trembling with fear and desperation. The puppeteer smiled, his mask shifting to reveal a sinister grin.
Very well,
he said, extending a hand toward Alex.
But be warned, my help comes at a price. Once you accept my gift, there will be no turning back.
As Alex reached out to take the puppeteer's hand, a feeling of dread washed over him. Was he about to trade one form of enslavement for another? But as he looked around the room, he knew that he couldn't continue down the path he was on. He needed to take a chance if he ever wanted to break free from the dance that had consumed him for so long. With a deep breath, Alex grasped the puppeteer's hand, feeling a cold, unnatural energy surge through him. As the room around him faded into darkness, he knew that his journey had only just begun. This concludes Chapter 1 of the story. With this setup, the protagonist has encountered the mysterious puppeteer and made a choice that will set the stage for the rest of the narrative. The following chapters will further explore the consequences of this choice, as well as the development of the protagonist's relationship with his newfound friend and their attempts to expose the puppeteer's true nature.